Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now, Core Recruitment, if you're not aware, is a recruitment company. We operate internationally and we cover mid to senior level positions for exec and non-exec positions. Now, we've got lots of articles and interviews which are on our website, www.corerecruitment.com. So if you want to check any of them out to get inspired and pumped up about what you're going to do in your business today, then please do feel free. Now, I am super, super, super excited to be interviewing this next individual, mostly because they work for a company which is very close to my heart, which is Hard Rock. Not sure if you know this, Eric, but 20 years ago when I set up Core Recruitment, my first ever client was Hard Rock.
Oh,
And I
wow.
got the tube. I went to go and visit Debbie Galbraith at Hard Rock at Piccadilly. And she sat me down and she told me all about Hard Rock and the business. And then she said, "We're going to put you on the PSL." And I think it changed the trajectory of my business, the fact that you guys were willing to take a chance on an unknown kid. So I absolutely love your brand. Now, I don't think that people out there realize just how big the business is and just kind of like how much that you do in terms of sales and all of that side of things. Now, I know that you look after the retail and the cafe business. So if you can just tell us a little bit about what you do globally, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a little bit about what's happening here. We got a lot of exciting things happening at the Hard Rock Cafe and retail division specifically. I mean, it really is such an honor to lead and serve this division that is a basically it's 55-year-old startup. I look at it as a 55-year-old startup. It's been around 55 years, and not many legacy brands can even say that today. So it is definitely an honor not only to be here with you and to speak a little bit about it, but just to be in this position. But yeah, the business is comprised basically. Currently, I oversee the company-owned restaurants and retail shops, as well as the franchise-owned and retail or franchise um, uh, cafes and the retail shops, as well as licensing and e-commerce also. And so it's a big division and a lot of revenues. We're currently see about $400 million in revenues. We're over 180 cafes strong across the globe and around 73 countries. And so there's a lot happening within our division currently right now. So we've got a huge landscape and breadth of business. And within you'd mentioned, it is part of a larger company where we have the casino, we've got digital gaming, and we've got all the hotels as well. But when we look at the cafe and the retail division, we look at it as sort of the first flag of brand entry into a new marketplace to see, how that market entry and response is from our brand in terms of the recognition. Currently right now we hold about a 96% brand recognition rate, which is incredible. It's up there with Disney and IBM and Apple in terms of just brand recognition. So chances are after this, somebody watches this, they're going to run into somebody with a Hard Rock Cafe shirt or some sort of Hard Rock logo type apparel.
Absolutely. But I mean, you guys don't just have customers, you have loyal fans who visit the business. And I mean, people with pins on, people like they get to London and they've got to come and get the Hard Rock t-shirt for London or Miami or here or there or the next place. I mean, how do you cultivate that type of fandom?
Yeah, it's funny you said that. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was in London and I held my first super fan roundtable where, there's a lot of these women and men who are just fanatics of the brand, and rightfully so. And they have the Facebook pages. They know exactly when a cafe is opening. They know before I do. They tell me a lot where things are happening. They got their ear to the grind, and they are such loyal fans of ours. And so we cultivate it by having, these conferences like Pin Sanity, where, we'll pick a location, we'll have a lot of the loyalists come over and they'll do pin trading, or they'll release new pins. Sometimes they make their own pins, which is really great, or early release on the t-shirts, or, we celebrate how many visits they made. We've got fans that have visited over 500. We got a handful, 500 cafes in their over their lifespan. And it was interesting because as I'm having these video calls and these roundtables, I mean, you should see how they've redone their house or their basement. They've got the bottle openers, they've got the magnets, they've got the t-shirts, the pens. Some of them have old signage from restaurants that were open that aren't open anymore. So it really is just amazing. And the magnitude of that is really something when you talk about, leading an organization, knowing that, as we start to evolve, like what is it that they fell in love with so much? And how do we retain that as we think about the next chapter where this the cafe experience could be? But they're remarkable people, really in tune. And I took it upon myself just to really listen in to see, okay, how do they feel about the menu, the pin collection, the retail, the atmosphere, the music selection, and they all have a very distinct opinion of how things could have been or should have been or where they're going to. So you can learn a lot from our super fans, and we're so grateful for them.
Absolutely. Now, those super fans, I'm sure they're absolutely incredible. It does set the customer expectation level rather high when they visit a Hard Rock, which is a great thing. And I guess it's also a good thing that your teams, I think I was having lunch with Debbie in one of your cafes. This was a couple of years ago. And there was a lady working in London who had worked with you guys for, I'm going to say 42 years,
Yep.
which is absolutely unheard of in terms of hospitality. But almost with you guys, it's like if somebody's with you for less than 10 years, they're like a new starter. You know what I mean? So, like, again, from kind of like an internal perspective, how are you maintaining and building that loyalty within your teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it starts with culture, right? Every time I go to a cafe, we just had you just mentioned Rita, who's incredible. She's the one who really was the first server at Old Park Lane, and you to hear her speak, you're ready to run through a wall. She's probably one of the best motivational, inspiring speakers that you could ever hear. And she talks about why she fell in love with Hard Rock because we took care of everybody from literally from the baker to the banker, and everybody would got the same level of service. And it wasn't about your stature, who you were. It was about how we treated you and made you feel. And that is very much intertwined in the veins of everybody that works within this division. It's giving for the sake of giving rather than the sake of gaining. It's making sure that we do celebrate all as one and love all, serve all. And so that's that started 55 years ago. And we just had a gentleman in Orlando celebrate 42 years. I think he just retired. And so you always are very humbled by the amount of tenure and service that our amazing team members have really put forth within our organization. And it starts with culture. It starts with taking care of them. I mean, prior to me, I think we raised wages across the board within the division. We took care of everybody. During COVID, we during situations when backs up against the wall, we really come forward, and that the culture is just to make sure that we are taking time to be kind and take care of our people. So there's that, and then also the career pathing aspect of it, and then the way that we can just be celebrating our team members and our loyal fans across. I think our team members really get behind that. And so, yeah, it is really remarkable. I'm not sure many organizations have this type of tenured success. I mean, what the turnover rate is in our industry, and it's just remarkable to see, where we really are and where we stand amongst, our some of our competition.
I mean, I do think one of the things which is quite incredible that normally or sometimes rather, when you do see kind of like that tenure, sometimes it can come a little bit with complacency, or
Yeah.
sometimes it can come with a lack of drive or lack of energy. But it's one of those things that when you do meet these people, Risa, for example, I don't know how many times I can mention this lady, but I mean, but she was on it. She was customer driven. She was sassy. She was upselling at the table. She was doing the whole thing. So like day to day, like, I mean, how do you incentivize people? Is there special schemes that you've got in place, or are they literally just doing it for love of the brand?
Yeah, I think it's for the love of the brand. They believe in it 100%. I think, also it's about proper preparation and management. I've always said in this business, so goes the operator, so goes the operation. And you got to have the right leader within the unit that is leading and encouraging those behaviors and that culture. So you could have the best thing on paper, you could have the best mottos and principles and beliefs and all those things. But if you don't and a great mission statement. But if you don't have the right operator to take all that and make it actionable and make it relatable to the team members and make them believe in it, then it goes without saying. So I have three fragments that I live and die by, and I've been doing this since I was a single unit operator when I owned my own restaurant. Is you got to make sure that you inform, educate, and inspire your team every single day. educate them. What are you trying to teach them? What can they learn to be better of their craft? Inform them. What do they need to know to be prepared to be successful? And then how are you going to inspire them to go get it done and motivate them to connect the dots and tell that story? And if you're doing that every day properly, if you are bringing your team together and you're adding those three fragments in the body of your messaging, and make it relatable to them, then the shift really becomes what it should be, right? And that's memorable. And so we really encourage, we call them sound checks. They're your pre-checks, and also accountability and making sure that the continued education starts to keep happening. So that way they see their information they're getting is being successful, because what they're going to make more tips, right? They're going to get more requests. They're going to get the better sections and the better areas. And so there's that part. And then there is a fun little gamification where you can throw contests and make it fun, and make it very competitive amongst the team, which we do that globally, we do that internally, and we do that regionally, we do that every 6 ways, because you got to see how you can optimize four-wall revenues, but also for a way to make them more money and make them realize that, hey, listen, every dollar that you increase your check average, you're adding 20% right to your pocket. So think about that math as you extrapolate that. You got to break it down and show them that, okay, listen, the outcome is good, but what can you do on a daily basis to impact that? And when you connect those dots, it's really powerful and dynamic, and you see great results.
Absolutely. Now, lots of companies at the moment are talking about kind of like the entertainment within a restaurant, like,
Yeah.
that they've got to come and have an experience. And I can't speak to somebody from Hard Rock without mentioning music and how that touches kind of like so many different points of the business and the organization. Can you tell me how this runs through your activities and also some of the external events that you guys do that really pop for you?
Oh man, we just did this incredible concert in Venice, and it was amazing for Carnival. You should see the pictures. It just amazing. So yeah, music is within our our core values, right? It's who we are. This is our brand. And so I've always said food and music are the two things that bring everybody together. And so we get to be conceptually be the barriers of that. And so yeah, day part programming is important, where we're deciding whether they're running acoustic sets or late night DJ sessions. We're getting back to a lot of the entertainment things, and not just music, right? But comedy, poetry. There's all kinds of live entertainment that we want to intertwine and be the best in class at. And so when you see that within, if you're in New Orleans or you're in London or you're in Barcelona, you can always count on standardized, consistent programming. So people who are coming into town, or they want to check back as a local, they know that they can expect, this show this day at this time. And so we've started, really bring back that regular occurrence of it. And that's what makes us special from everybody else, right? That's the differentiator. When you're being able to have some sort of special occasion and know that we've got the music and the capabilities, the right sound, the right stage presence, the right setup, to be able to really execute it. Because there's a difference between, somebody who's trying to do it and they might not have the right equipment, or they haven't invested in the right instruments or things of that nature to be able to execute it. We have certainly do that. We obsess about those details, and that includes the lighting on the stage, and every little detail matters to emulate that ambiance that we were trying to get, that makes people feel like, oh, this is the place I want to be for live music.
Absolutely. Now, having a brand as powerful as Hard Rock, and then when you're trusting that brand, obviously with franchisees, that's a massive responsibility. And you just mentioned the consistency, the attention to detail, the
Yeah.
revenue, and the resources that that kind of takes to do. So when you're selecting your franchisees, and I guess also when you're like, because it's brand stewardship, right? Like, I mean, so when you're selecting them and when you're maybe, I don't know, how do you get the experience consistent between corporate and franchise stores? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. It starts with having great partners, right? You got to have great partners who are bought into our core values, who share the same ethos, who see the business the same way we see it, who want to really make sure that the brand is protected at all costs. And, not necessarily second to that, but 1A to that is a great team to be able to execute it. And I will say, I've worked with some different organizations who had franchise models or licensing models or asset light models. And we probably wholeheartedly have one of the best in class franchise teams, that govern and overlook, and oversee and support and partner up with our franchise folks. probably best in class. And we very much look at these franchise units as our own, right? Because we want to make sure we're protecting the brand. And there's BPEs, which are best practice evaluations, which our teams will go and they'll do some audits and they'll check in. And it's not necessarily to see what's going wrong, but what's going right. And a lot of times we learn from our franchise partners of things that could be better and how we could be more entrepreneurial in our own assets. And so there's a really good shared practice there. And there's a nice two-way communication. The franchise folks saying, "Hey, what else can we do?" And so our corporate team is constantly redeveloping and developing things that could be really beneficial to them in their specific markets. So it's to answer your question, how do you ensure consistency? It's a really great partner backed by a really supporting team and really solid, consistent communication back and forth with how we can improve in all areas and phases of the business. And really, with that, everything works. I think transparency is a big part of that as well. Consistent, frequent meetings, and our franchise team is they're zoned out regionally and they do an amazing job working with all our franchise partners to ensure that they've got the right communication, that there is a high level of transparency, and there's really a really good partnership across the board.
Nice. Now, if there's lots of people out there who not every day is a sunny day, and sometimes people have dark days. My personal advice is if you're having a dark day, check out Eric's Instagram, his LinkedIn. You want a motivational speech, something like that. He's got them in spades. There's always a good bumper sticker that you're just like, yeah, that's going to get me through the day. It's great.
I appreciate
So you're welcome. But I mean, you have got a massive global job. There's lots of travel. There's never an off switch. There's never a moment. So like, in terms of like, how you maintain your own mental health, how you look after that you're always positive. Have you got any hints or tips when you're traveling as much as you do?
Yeah, I think you have to have a strong sense of discipline. For me, the working out's a big part of my behavior and how I eat well and make sure I take care of myself. I've always had the motto, what does a flight attendant tell you before, you take off? It's like, listen, in the event of emergency, if the oxygen mask comes down, put it on yourself before you put it on others. And so I try to adhere to that advice and saying, okay, what do I want to before I'm the example for others, how can I be example for myself and every phase of my operating system? And that's for my mind, right? My body, my energy level, my enthusiasm, my excitement, my curiosity, all those things about the business. So I could be the best leader and serve my team to the best of my ability. And so ensuring that I'm surrounded by the right things are important because you are a sum of all the things that you surround yourself with. So ensuring that my nutrition stays where it should be. I try to get the right amount of sleep, although that doesn't happen always. So sometimes I'm going on adrenaline all the time because the business and the people, quite frankly, energize me. I think another thing too, I got to give credit to my wife having a great partner in my life. We'll be married, we'll be married 23 years. I've been with her 25, and she's just such a great anchor in knowing that it's an equal partnership, and she's very positive as well. So you got to have a good partner too, whatever that looks like, to ensure that there's listening, there's an outlet, and all those things as well. So I got to give her a lot of credit for dealing with me being gone all the time and being sort of so relentless and enthusiastic about what we're trying to do here. So it's a balance. I always say like you got to figure out there's no such thing as balance. There's just finding a center, and because if balance was true, you would sleep and eat and you would do all the things in equal parts. And we just don't do that. So you got to find intentionality and center around what you're trying to do. And that's what I try to exemplify a lot when I'm providing an act of service, like a story on my Instagram or on LinkedIn. Listen, I don't know who it's touching or who it's reaching or landing. I just feel like it's something in my heart and mind I'd like to get off my chest, because sometimes a lot of the times it's advice I'm giving myself at the same time. And so I'm like, well, listen, if this mindset, if this thing that I'm working on that I've come to realize like could help me, it could probably help others. So how do I get it out there and send it out to somebody? And if one person says, hey, this really helped me get through, this was awesome, then it was worth it. Because in leadership and just doing time on this earth, our responsibility is an act of service across everything. And so I utilize that as a channel, as an act of service, just to help people out to stay sane, to stay mentally grounded. Because if you are in this type of business, you have a high role and demanding, or if you've got a family, all these things, responsibilities, you need someone to talk to, or someone just to say, hey, listen, are you checking in? Are you doing okay? Here's what I learned, and here's how maybe it could be applicable to you for you to be better, and get to the other side of whatever it is you're dealing through. So I hope that answers the question. I know it's long-winded, but super passionate about it because there's a lot of people out there that could use a lot of help for sure. And so you're always trying to find things that you can, hold on to
No,
move you forward, to grow, right? Yeah.
it's the whole purpose of doing this series is sharing that kind of best practice. So I 100% think it's great. It's great. In terms of kind of yourself, were these all learned behaviors? Did you work with people either in Hard Rock or other organizations who kind of like, you really took that example from, or who kind of inspired you when you were coming up through your career?
Man, it's a good question. So many people have inspired me. Yeah, obviously, one of them is my dad was great. He was somebody who just gave me amazingly sound advice, and hardworking Italian furniture finisher who just who was relentless about being a perfectionist and small business and man, and he just was amazing, giving me the most simplistic advice, and you're like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. So he was always inspiring as I look back and listen to our conversations. Maybe at the time we had this conversation, I didn't think so, but now they're very.
Hmm.
And I've had some folks. I worked for Carrabba's for a while, and Johnny Carrabba, and there were some other executives who were really good to me and inspired me. And there's some folks I met along the way, entrepreneurial and so forth, who have helped me along my journey for sure, and have really impacted me in a different way. I think that I've always been driven because I was a basketball player coming up. So I'm 5'10", an Italian, and there's not many of us in the National Basketball Association or have made it. So I've always been the underdog in life in a lot of ways. And so I've always had this like, okay, tell me I can't do it. I'm going to show you I'm going to do it. And so I've always had this chip on my shoulder because really, I started off in this business as a busboy because I had to. I was homeless for 2 years growing up in South Florida. I didn't have a home. I got kicked out at an early age. And so I had to really kind of decide, what path do I want to go down in life? And a lot of people I don't know can really have the courage to say, hey, I really want better for myself and what I can do. I really feel like I have something to give the world, and I feel that and recognize it in my heart and mind. So I'm going to take this hard route, and I'm just going to work my butt off relentlessly, be the first one there, be the last one to leave, say yes when everybody is saying no. And that's what you don't find anymore. It's interesting in the operators, you try to recruit, you probably get this. And, you may be recruiting for a job that's down the street, or you may be asking somebody, hey, can you go down there, a couple blocks and work at this place within the same company? And they'll say, no, I'm comfortable right here. I think too many people are comfortable being comfortable. And, those who stand out are the ones that raise their hand and say, hey, I'll go over there and do it. I'll figure it out. Drop me in there and let me see what I can do. And so that mindset is few and far between these days, I think, as me coming up, it was sort of like, hey, who wants to go to, Texas for 2 months and run this restaurant? You go, I'll do it because no one else is doing it. And you did it, and you made a name for yourself because you were the one willing to say yes and figure it out, and, let your work ethic sort of lead your way. Listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but one thing that separated me from everybody else and still does to today is my work ethic, because I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the result we need.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about being homeless in Miami for 2 years? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in West Palm, and I think just typical kind of chaos. I was, not the most, probably the best kid coming up, and I grew up in a challenging neighborhood, and didn't really have the, great connection. My parents were divorced when I was very young, and I was always playing basketball on the streets and never came home and did all these things. And my mom got sick, and she was very poor. She didn't have any money. My dad wasn't paying what he needed to pay. And so it was sort of like, hey, we really can't, this take care of you. This isn't right. So I just stopped showing up and going home, and was couch surfing for many years until one of my coaches took me in a couple years later. And so I was like living like sometimes I would sleep outside next to the park bench and get up and go to school the next day. Sometimes I was sleeping in this friend's house. Sometimes it was a girlfriend's house. Sometimes it was a cousin's house. It was just wherever I could find place to eat and sleep. And I was working as a busboy this whole time, just paying for what I could pay for and doing all those things and not really connecting with my parents that much at the time because it was sort of like they couldn't, they were doing their thing. And, and then, luckily I had a really great guy who was a mentor of mine, he's a coach of mine who took me in and said, "Hey, listen, you could stay at my house if you need to." And I paid him rent. So, and was there for a couple of years until I can move out. And then I, got my own place with another roommate and then, you just sort of move on. But, I had to learn at a young age that, listen, if you're going to make it, you got to look to yourself and make it on your own. You got to figure out ways, to generate income to pay for the things you need to pay for. And because being in that situation wasn't an option. It was just like, here is the situation. I got to figure out how to get out of this thing. So I had to hustle and put my mind down and work and figure out means, to be able to get through those moments in my life. But yeah, it was super challenging. I look back on it and I've got kids of my own right now and, they're 18, 15 and 9. And I could never imagine, them going through something like that. But, luckily I had, pretty good people around me that could help me get through what I need to get through. And, it wasn't always the best thing, but it taught me a lot of lessons. And like where I'm at today, I'm extremely grateful for it. And so there's not a day that goes by that I'm just not, appreciative of what I have in my life today for sure.
Well, I think there's a book in you, Eric. I think there's a book in you. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm
so
actually writing one, to be
you
honest with you.
are.
I swear, yeah, yeah. I just got to find the time to finish it up. But I think this will be a really big chapter in it, also. And hopefully we do what we're set out to do. But yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh. Now, last question just on Hard Rock before we wrap up. So, I mean, the brand has consistently, and consistency is such a good word, kind of like, which has kind of like been throughout this kind of like meeting, but consistently been evolving, consistently staying ahead of the competition. And lots of your competitors have struggled or gone by the wayside and all of that kind of stuff. So, in the next 20 years, like technology, innovation, customer experience, how are you guys going to be staying ahead of the pack?
You mean for the cafes
Yeah.
specifically? Man, it's a great question. We've done a really good job, the last couple of years at getting on to the right side of it. I think 20 years is hard to talk about. We're focusing on, the getting through this week, but we also got a 5-year plan. And I think, the cafe division is in a great place. Um, to your point, it's challenging. There's not too many legacy themed restaurants out there anymore, but we are fighting the fight every day. We're trying to gain back market share. Our guest satisfaction scores have never been higher. I think we've got an 88% overall satisfaction, which is telling that there are people that are just like love the brand so much, especially when they come in, they get this great experience. Our team members do an amazing job with service. The food gets executed. Our food's made from scratch. Not too many people know that. So we need to continue to keep holding on to those fragments of the things that we do so well. We do need to evolve. So you could see memorabilia becoming more immersive and more technology based, right? Probably less museum like. You could probably see, the entertainment being shaped in a different way, the retail appealing to a younger generation while keeping the legacy of the classic tea, and all these things we're working on today. And then listen, it's at some point there'll probably be a cafe experience 2.0 and what that could look like in terms of a new concept. I don't know. Could be, could not. We're something we constantly talk about how to evolve that. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, and we like the franchise model too. There's a lot of great partners out there. We're in the best locations, right? And it's really nice to work with some amazing partners to see how we can continue to keep growing that breadth of our unit count in such a challenging climate. So we just got to be smart and savvy. The next couple of years are really going to set us up for what that growth will look like for the future.
Excellent. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to run over things with us. I really enjoyed having the conversation with you, and I think that there'll be lots of people looking up LinkedIn now for those inspirational quotes, right?
Hey man, I'll try to keep them coming. I just got to find the time to do it. But I appreciate the support, man.